one.
You're about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action, and only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. Today, we are pleased and honored to have as our guest Doug Casey. Mr. Casey is a best-selling author, world-renowned speculator, founder and chairman of Casey Research, and libertarian philosopher. And he's also known as the International Man. And he's garnered a well-earned reputation for his erudite insights into politics, economics, and investment markets. He has been featured as a guest on hundreds of radio and TV shows. He's been a guest with us before. Doug is widely respected as one of the preeminent authorities on rational speculation, especially in the high-potential natural resource sector, of which I invest in. That's my little niche, much smaller, but my niche. And so during our broadcast, we do have our phone lines open. You may call during our live broadcast, 646-652-4620. That's 646-652-4620 if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. And do so. Make sure you press the one button so we know where you want to break in, because some people just listen to our program via telephone. Doug, welcome back to Liberty Talk Radio.
Oh, thank you, Joe, and it's nice to be here. I'm speaking to you right now from the beach in Punta del Este, Uruguay.
Wow. Well, last week I was, or 2 weeks ago, I was at the beach at Dominican Republic, a beautiful beach, just absolutely fantastic place. Weather was fantastic. It was in the low 80s. I could have stayed there forever, but I did get bored, I'll be honest with you. I'm too on edge. I'm just moving all the time, and things were kind of slow and just nice. And I'm not used to that. Anyway, Doug, I don't know really where to start, but I am having a heck of a problem with the economic affairs of our country. I think I can put my finger on it, but most people would consider me a little off beam if I start mouthing about it. In a smaller way, I'm a commodities investor. I keep up on the commodities and what's going on worldwide, as well as the economy. And of course, we have guests on here. We have many economists. Tomorrow we're having, who we have tomorrow? I've got to say, Lawrence Kutlakoff from the University of Boston will be here tomorrow with us. So we're constantly talking about the economy. What we're doing now doesn't seem to pass any sort of laugh test. I can't seem to place anything together. There are so many people who are so ecstatic that Trump is finally going to make America great again, when people don't realize that this is not a company that he's running, it's a country. We as people make America great again. His job is to make sure no one interferes with our hopes and our dreams and our aspirations. But I can't seem to get anyone to think that way. They just say, well, he'll make America great again. I think I'm losing it, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how much longer I can take this. Maybe you could help me out and square me away.
Well, to start with, I agree with you totally and absolutely. Everything you said, you're quite correct. And this is going to be the tragedy of the Trump presidency, because what we have now is not just a political disagreement between people that live in the red counties and the people that live in the blue counties. This is not just a political disagreement. This is actual visceral hatred between them, and he's crystallized it. He's brought it, it's been simmering for a generation, and he's brought it to the surface. And it seems to me like the next step is civil war. Now, on the other hand, the average American is too degraded and too fat and lazy and too doped up on all kinds of prescription and other drugs to actually get into a street fighting civil war. But, you know, that's a generalization about 300 million people. So, no, this is going to end very badly. And the problem is that Donald Trump has become associated, largely incorrectly, with the free market. So when the economy collapses, which in my opinion it's been due to do for years, since we started exiting the eye of the great financial hurricane that started in 2007, he'll be blamed for it, whether he's responsible or not because of something stupid he does, like the duties that he wants to put on imports and so forth. So this is going to be a time of great chaos, and it's not just here in the U.S. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and you know, this is not limited. This thinking is not limited to just the Joe Sixpack. I recently would go to a business meeting every Tuesday morning. There's a attorney. There's a guy who finances companies. Various business people. And I started to realize that every time I was asked a question, no one would question what I had to say. They would argue with me, no matter what I said. And
yeah.
What happened there? Oh, we just had a telephone interference. But and I decided I wasn't going to go back to that meeting on Tuesday morning, although I enjoyed it, just because people seem to be zombieized, I think, in their thinking. Everyone was towing the line, the same line constantly. And I say, well, no, it really doesn't work that way. And the responses I would get, oh, geez, you have such a negative attitude. And I got to a point where I couldn't take it because I was one of many thinking differently. And here I was with business people, and you think they would be thinking the same way I was. I wasn't anything radical. I was just talking economics. And yet even basic economics seemed to have left people's minds. I'm concerned that we can't really get out of this. It has to correct regardless of the way people think and the way they act and what they'd like to see done. And I think that's scary.
Yeah, that's right. It's because in the real world, actions have consequences, cause has effect. So what an economist is supposed to do, and most of the people that call themselves economists like Krugman and Stiglitz and Lawrence Summers, these people aren't economists to start with. What they are is they're political apologists. So if you're a real economist, what you try to do is not just predict the immediate and direct effects of something, but the indirect and delayed ones. But we can go back further than this, Joe, because I think that the long downhill slide of Western civilization started with World War I. And it's been going down and down since then. And it's reaching a crescendo now, where large parts of the population, you see these chimpanzees jumping around and hooting and on television with their riots and such. They actually hate Western civilization, and they want to actively destroy it. And I think they're going to succeed. And we could talk about why I think that's going to be true. But hey, we had the good luck to live in many ways during the best time, well, one of the best times in human history. And maybe things will get better again if Ray Kurzweil is right, but that's in the future.
Yeah, it surprised me. I was listening to Peter Schiff. He's one of my favorites in the investment community, and he was talking about Bill Gates, and Bill Gates made the comment that if a company automates and let's say hires some sort of computer, a robot to perform, and robot can mean anything, obviously. There's no definition for a robot other than it replaces a human, can take any form, then that robot should pay taxes as a human would in a company. And he went on for about 15 minutes explaining how insane that was, because of course the machine doesn't go on Social Security, it doesn't need Medicare, all this other stuff. It doesn't get unemployment insurance and all this other stuff. And but when you think about it, if that held true, if you go back in time, any time they went from the horse-drawn carriage to the automobile, anybody who owned a horse, would get some sort of government compensation, or, you'd have to pay extra money because you put somebody else out of business. And it seems like the whole world, even the likes of Bill Gates, makes absolutely no sense in what they say. But it always sounds so good. Oh, good, those companies are going to save money, and that money's going to be given to the government so the government have enough money to pay off the debt. That doesn't work that way.
Well, look, I've long said that people like, in particular, Bill Gates and his buddy Warren Buffett, and for that matter, George Soros and a lot of these other guys, they're what you call idiot savants. They're extremely good at some things, one thing, but get them out of their area of expertise, and they're actually idiots. And this is incredibly stupid on Gates' part to say this. It's a Luddite view. And it's wrong on so many levels. For instance, it seems to imply that we want to raise more taxes for the government. I mean, anybody with any sense or sense of morality, in addition, wants to deny revenue to the state, not find a way to get more taxes to the state.
Right.
So the whole thing is backwards. I don't know what I can say about it. I mean, look, the world has a life of its own, and it's really like a gigantic avalanche that started out as a snowball at the top of the valley, and it's been building momentum, and the snowball's been getting bigger and bigger. And at this point, you can't stop it. You might have been able to stop it a few decades ago, but now you get in front of this thing, you're just going to get crushed. So go to a pleasant place and watch it on your widescreen and consider it free entertainment.
Right. Yeah. Well,
look, you know what Einstein said about this? He said, after hydrogen, the most common thing in the universe is stupidity. And Gates is not exempt from that, even though he's a genius at business.
Right.
But business has nothing to do with economics. I mean, they're two different things. And businessmen are generally not the friends of the free market, contrary to popular belief. And that goes for Mr. Trump, too, of course.
What do you think Trump's redeeming characteristics are, and you think he can put things together, or you think this thing is going to unravel even faster with him at the helm?
Yeah, it's going to unravel much faster with him at the helm because he's crystallized the lines of battle. Now, I'll tell you the good thing about Trump is that this isn't, as I said before, this isn't just a political dispute or an economic difference of opinions. This is an actual culture war. And he's on what I consider basically the correct side. He wants, he has a gut feeling for preserving the nice things that we have in Western civilization. He doesn't understand the intellectualisms behind it. So he's arrayed against these people in the Democratic Party, which isn't so much a swamp. It's actually a cesspool, is what it is. It's much worse than a swamp. So I'm all for Mr. Trump from that point of view, but he's fighting a losing battle. And just the demographics of the U.S. alone guarantee that he's going to not be reelected the next time, assuming we don't have a civil war in the next 4 years anyway.
Well, on the commodities front, commodities seem to be making some headway. There seems to be an upward momentum, especially in the past 2 months. I think it's up 15-20% or something like that. And although the Dow is up, Trump said 3 months ago or 4 months ago, the Dow is a big, fat, ugly bubble. Now it's a bigger, fatter, uglier bubble, but he's not saying that anymore. But I'm glad to see that the commodities indexes haven't collapsed, but the stock market continues to rise, and it just smacks of 1999. I remember those days when I would drive to our office we had in the Utica Square Medical Center, and the morning news would always talk about the latest .com stocks and whatever. And I say, boy, when this thing blows, it's going to be big. And one morning it went down by several hundred points in just in an hour's time. But then it came back, and I said, there it is. That's the trial balloon. The next time around it's going to be big. And it was big after that. I feel the same way today, that we're in this big bubble, and we're going to have some slide backs, and they're going to come back up again, and then one day, surprise. Do you think that's going to happen? And if so, how long do you think we can hold on to the current paradigm?
Well, as you know, all the governments in the world, not just the U.S. government, but the Europeans, the Japanese, the Chinese, and all these little governments have created trillions and trillions and trillions of new currency units that have all gone into the financial markets. So the stock market is very worrisome because by any parameters, it's way, way overpriced. But it's not nearly as bad as the bond market. That is a super bubble, a super double bubble. I mean, it's South Sea type bubble. I mean, tulip type bubble. So bonds, and since it's a much bigger market than stocks, it's much more serious. But the stock market usually rides with the bond market. I mean, interest rates go down, stocks go up. So I think it's all going to come unglued. Now, are we at the dead peak right now? I don't know. It seemed like we were at the peak. Well, it was just like, in the internet bubble that you just mentioned. Gee, those stocks look ridiculously overpriced in 1996, in 1997, 1998. But the real gains didn't come until 98 and 99 and the first month of 2000. So it's very tough picking a top, but at some point I don't know when it is. I think we're in the final inning of the game, that's for sure. But I'm sure I'm going to try to go short, and I sell naked calls against bonds, generally speaking. And yeah, this is going to be one for the record books. So the key is just going to be keeping what you have. The good news is that most of the real wealth in the world is still going to be here, even if stock and bond market values are devastated. So hopefully you'll be one of the winners, because most of the real wealth will still be here. We'll see.
Wealth is neither created nor destroyed. It just transfers. It goes from one place to another place, and you just want to be in the right place. And right now, I am very heavy in commodities, right across the board. And
yeah, me too. Me too.
So
I basically sell naked puts against them when I get the price and everything that I want. I'm long wheat. That's the only one I'm actually long right now.
Let me ask you about an obscure commodity, one that people typically do not invest in, and that's platinum. We had Rick Rule on our program a few times, and he has now a platinum and palladium ETF. I think the call sign is SPPP, and which I put some money into. But platinum is something like 20 or 30 times more rare than gold, but it doesn't have the characteristic of money. It's basically an industrial metal. There are some people saying that typically there's only 3 times in history they say that the platinum has been valued less than gold, and this is one of them. Typically, recently, it's been a $300 premium to gold, and they say this is an excellent time to accumulate a position in platinum. And I wanted your take on that, if you have one.
Well, you pretty much spelled it out. It's an industrial metal. Now, if we have an economic collapse, which I expect we will, that would mean that industrial metals are not going to do well. On the other hand, most platinum comes from South Africa and secondarily from Russia. And in South Africa, mining is a very, very tough business because of the political environment. Of course, mining is a crappy business everywhere in the world. I feel like when I talk to conventional financial people, I really feel like an idiot having to say that I'm involved in the mining business because it's a 19th century choo-choo train business that makes sense from any point of view today. I think it's an interesting speculation, but frankly, I'm just more friendly to gold and silver themselves.
Yeah. Now, if you had an opportunity to sit down with Donald Trump, what would you tell him?
Well, I don't think it would be possible to tell him anything. I think that, whatever, I don't think he's got a coate philosophy. I think it's very nebulous of feelings rather than an intellectually structured view on the world. So I would tell him what I'm going to tell the president of Haiti when I see him in, I don't know, next week or the week after, something like that. Because that's my hobby, is going to backward third world countries. The more backward, the better, and talking to the guy that runs the place, preferably a military dictator, and giving him a plan that will make him popular with the people, which would be a novelty for him, and would make him legitimately wealthy, something that most of them have never even thought about, becoming legitimately wealthy, and putting him on the front cover of every magazine in the world in a favorable light, which is pretty hard to believe, for the next decade as we turn the country into a new Singapore. But, Trump has these ideas about the government should do this and the government should do that. Like, look at this thing with Obamacare. They're not talking about repealing it. They're talking about repeal and replace.
Right.
What the hell is that all about? I mean, medical care is something that you should pay for. Why don't they pay for your car's medical care too? I mean, it's just as logical. And they call it health care. It's not health care. Health care is something you do for yourself with proper diet and exercise and living habits. But they call it health care, which makes people think, oh yeah, I'd like my health to be taken care of magically somehow. The whole thing's screwed up. So he's going to make up some kind of cockamamie plan where, oh yeah, we can't have people dying in the streets. And of course, your pre-existing diseases. This isn't insurance, so it's going to be a dog's breakfast. Forget about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where we go. Some time ago, not some time ago, actually, just relatively recently, in the past few months, I was channel flipping on television, which I have a problem. I can't watch any program for more than 2 or 3 minutes because none of them make any sense. And of course, I stop at a zombie program. There's several of them on television these days, and I'm thinking, several? I said,
with more than several.
I'm sorry.
There's more than several.
Yeah.
I said there's a lot.
Yeah, but I was thinking, I said, you know what? I never watched the zombie movie. I mean, I watch it maybe for 10 seconds just to see what was going on, and then I channel, I get off of it.
That kind of zombie.
Real zombie. The dragging of the feet and the blood. Stuff. And I keep on thinking, but I don't understand a zombie. They eat people, but they don't eat each other. They one leg always seems to be dragging behind the other. They're alive, but they're dead. It never made any sense. And then it just dawned on me. This is just couple months ago. It dawned on me. It's all a metaphor. What they're telling us is this is the American public. They've become zombies ever from the time that they go to public school all the way through their lives, and they repeat everything they say. And then I said, now I know why people, when you discuss Donald Trump's reign with someone, they come out with the same answer. But that's because Trump is going to make America great again. Reminds me of that movie Ideology about 6-7 years ago, where people were starving because the crops weren't growing, because they were irrigating the crops with Gatorade. And of course, the guy from the past, came to the future. From the past, was living there, and I don't recall how he got there. And he said, well, the reason why your crops are dying is you're watering them with Gatorade. You should use water. And the woman says, but Gatorade has 11 essential vitamins and minerals. And when when I saw that zombie movie, and I thought that that this really is a metaphor for the American people, I thought of that movie. You know, Gatorade has 11 essential vitamins and minerals, or whatever the case may be. I said that what sparked that was when a friend of mine said, "Oh, but Trump will make America great again," and it just like exploded in my brain. I said, "My God, we're zombies," and I think it's all a metaphor. And I think we are zombies. We're just following along.
Yeah. No, I'm afraid he can't make America great again because one man. No, it's too bad. I really hate to see something end so badly and see so many people, their hopes be dashed by betting on a political figure.
Yeah.
Because, well, look, Joe, to start with, libertarians, and I presume you're also an anarchist.
Well, sort of, yeah.
Oh, I am. But
I have to admit, yes.
we're genetic mutants,
Yeah.
and we're way over on one side of the bell-shaped curve. So, you know, there are some people out there that actually are libertarians, and you know, you can kind of wake up, oh, I never thought of it that way, and then they get turned on to it. But you know, we're a genetic mutation. We're just a teeny little. So the situation, I hate to sound like the situation is hopeless, but it basically is. But on the other hand, as technology advances and so forth, everything will be okay. I guess the only thing most people care about is a high standard of living and a new car and a nice house and enough food. And maybe that'll continue, or maybe it won't because of economic stupidity. But it's entertainment. And we live in an entertainment society. You know, we used to live in a hunting-gathering society, and then we lived in an agricultural society, and then it was an industrial society, and then an electronic. But now we're in an entertainment society, which is why fools like Gates can say, "Oh, don't worry, the robots are going to do everything, and we'll tax them and give everybody a guaranteed income and so forth." Well, yeah, there's some truth to the robots doing everything in the future. But we live in an entertainment society, so we got to get used to it. Forget about rational discourse. Nobody reads a book anymore. I mean, look, you've watched Mark Dice and this guy Waters on Fox, who goes around and interviews people on the street. You seen those things?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, like where Mark Dice comes up. This is my best one, and he has a Hershey chocolate bar and a 10-ounce silver bar, and he's in Santa Monica, upmarket area. And he walks up to the upper middle class person, says, "This is your lucky day. Chocolate bar, silver bar." They all take the chocolate bar. Forget about it.
Yes.
I'm not kidding. You can Google it right now.
Yeah, I like when they ask basic questions and they can't answer them at all. I mean, they don't have the foggiest idea of what's going on.
No. I mean, look, Jay Leno used to do this, and he asked questions like, "Who did we fight in the Civil War?" And people say, "The Germans." I mean, they know nothing, the average person. And what you were saying earlier about you're going to this lunch group, when I'm in Aspen, that's where I live during the northern summer, I go to a couple of different lunch groups, and these are all semi-retired rich guys that go to this thing, and they tolerate me because it's, you know, just a bunch of guys, and I say what I want. Now, I'm tolerated because they consider it amusing, but they don't dare introduce me to their wives or their other friends. But no, it's very, the whole situation is very hopeless.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen to the currency? There's speculation about the United States losing its place as the world's reserve currency because it's going to its percentage of the special drawing rights, the IMF special drawing rights, it's losing its percentage to maintain veto power, and there's a concern that once the United States no longer has veto power within the IMF, the other countries could in fact veto the United States, and we may lose the status as the world's reserve currency, which would be, I assume, disastrous for us. I can speculate what would happen, but I'm not smart enough to know exactly how that happened. And also, I've read recently that Sharia law is going to change things, where they're going to allow people in the Middle East who are religious to own gold, because they're going to change the wording around, and I don't know what that wording is. I can't repeat. I don't remember what it was. And they say there's going to be a tremendous surge for gold. And they say about 1/3 increase in the purchase of gold will occur once the Sharia law is changed. But with all of this, it seems like the United States dollar, we're just printing it like it's going out of style. And everyone tells me, well, geez, we're the strongest currency in the world. I said, well, that's like saying, boy, you're the healthiest guy in hospice. I mean, it doesn't mean anything.
You're absolutely right, of course. But I'm trying to remember some of the points you made, because you made a number of good points. First thing I'd say, you mentioned the IMF. I don't really give a damn what the IMF or its little sister, the World Bank, does. They should be abolished, period. Right. They have no right to exist, number one. Number two, the Federal Reserve, which creates US dollars, should also be abolished.
Right.
I mean, and people talk about these things like they're fixtures in the cosmic firmament, which is, entirely wrong. What's going to happen to the US dollar? Well, the fact of the matter is, for the last, since the mid-'70s, dollars have been the major export of the US.
Right.
We run typically a $500 billion or so dollar per year trade deficit, which means that the nice Germans send us Mercedes and the nice Japanese send us Sonys or whatever, and we give them paper. This is a wonderful trade.
Right.
So the US has an artificially high standard of living. And when the dollar is recognized as the hot potato it is, because I don't know how many, they don't either. There's 10 trillion, 15 trillion of them outside the US. These foreigners don't have any obligation to hold them. When they decide it's a hot potato and they start dumping them, look out for all kinds of different reasons we could talk about. And that's absolutely going to happen. There's no question about it. And it's probably going to happen this time around, which is why I've been taking on some debt, which is almost impossible to do here in Argentina and Uruguay, because these people generally, but I can take on debt in dollars, which is pretty good. So it's like a good way to be short the dollar, especially when I'm only paying 2% interest rates.
Right. Well, what about the average Joe Blow, the average family that actually believes in the system, believes the dollar's good as gold, they're working hard, they're hellaciously in debt, and they know they're going to work for the rest of their lives just paying things off, but they have a very long horizon. My horizon is very short. I mean, financially, it's very short. I mean, I see things coming to a head not 20 or 30 years from now, but much sooner than that. I don't know when, but much sooner than that. And that's the way I'm preparing for me and my family. And I sort of have a feel of where I will be. But as far as the country's concerned, the way the country thinks, and I've been around enough to know that, geez, very few people are thinking like you and I are thinking, Doug. Very few people. This is going to come as a shock.
What's going to happen to the average guy?
Yeah, I mean, what?
I think his standard of living in relative terms, the rich have been getting richer because the rich guys that are politically well connected are standing right next to the fire hydrant of money that's coming out of Washington and New York, and they get to drink their fill, and then a little bit of, the people at the bottom can maybe wet their beaks some if they're lucky. So this is one of the reasons why we might have a revolution, because the average guy is not very bright, but he can see that the rich are getting richer, and it's all because of politics and political connections. So what can he do? I don't know. Look, I think we're like in France in 1789, at which point I would have been very happy to see Louis XVI overthrown, except then it got worse. They got Robespierre, and then they got Napoleon. Or we could be like Russia in 1917. I would have been happy to see Nicholas II overthrown, except then they got Lenin, and then it got worse with Stalin. And the same thing is likely to happen in this country. I can give you other historical examples where it always gets worse for a while after there's a revolution, and then there's a reset. But, forget about Western civilization. I mean, it's going to be something new, and it's not going to be as good for all kinds of reasons we could talk about.
Yeah.
But maybe that's irrelevant to the average guy who may be just grubbing for roots and berries. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I usually relay the story. When I was in France, I think it was 1960, I had old francs in my left pocket and new francs in my right pocket, and they were a ratio of 10 to 1. So whenever I went to buy something, they were still taking old francs, but you had to pay 10 times as much and new francs. And they devalued the currency 10 to 1, which was...
that happens. Yeah, that happens all the time all over the world, of course. Yeah. I mean, here in South America, they're famous for this type of thing. And this is tragic and disastrous because, especially in these little backward countries, you can only save if you produce more than you consume and want to save. What do you save? You save the local currency, the local bumfucks or dog shits or whatever they call the local currency. And then when the government destroys it, either rapidly or maybe even overnight, you're left with nothing. It destroys the capital that people saved. It destroys their lives. No, this is disastrous.
Yeah, yeah. Argentina devalued twice in 15 years, didn't they?
Who?
Argentina.
Oh wow, Argentina. Argentina is in a perpetual race with Brazil to see who can destroy the most currencies in the shortest period of time. And since this nonsense all started in the 1930s, incidentally, with both Argentina and Brazil, who incidentally, up until the last depression, had gold coins in circulation and their currencies were actually okay. Both of them, I don't know. I actually did a study on this one time between Argentina and Brazil. They both had about 5 or 6 totally new currencies. So if you had the old currency, you were wiped out. Right. And they've done this 5 or 6 times, but people just don't learn. And that's going to happen to the U.S. dollar next, I promise you.
Yeah. If I ever bring this up at a meeting about devaluing the dollar and I give examples of other countries, everyone looks at me like I have totally lost my mind. And not only that, but I'm anti-American.
Well, look at the good news. People that feel that way are going to be punished by the market. And I'm a great believer in justice. What is justice, incidentally? Justice is people getting what they deserve.
Right.
So in my opinion, if they're wiped out, they're kind of getting what they deserve. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them.
Right. So I guess I'll get the last laugh, right?
Well, if they don't put you up against the wall,
right.
Joe.
Shoot me first.
Well, this is why, and I've been saying this for many years, and I eat my own cooking on everything. You have to diversify politically because your risk today is not financial. Your financial risks are huge, but an even bigger risk is political because you don't know that they're going to put foreign exchange controls. Well, we already have them actually, but serious draconian foreign exchange controls on you in the U.S. And now you can't move money out of the country. And of course, any money that you have in a bank, it's not yours. It's an unsecured liability of the bank, and most banks are actually bankrupt. Another subject we could talk about for hours, why that's an accurate statement on my part. So this is very serious. It's going to be so interesting to watch. I just don't want to be too adversely affected by it. But I've got an estancia down here with cattle and all this kind of stuff, and I think I'll probably be okay. But who knows? You can never tell.
Right. Yeah. Well, people
actually, though, I'll go further. That's just the stage of life that I'm at. But if I was 30 today, I would get on a plane, and I'd recommend your listeners do this. Get on a plane and go to Africa, which is the heart of chaos in the world. But in chaos, you have an unlevel playing field, and that's what you want. Because if you come from the U.S. and you go to a backward country, and they're all backward in Africa, actually. I wouldn't go to South Africa, though. It's another story. You're automatically on a playing field tilted in your advantage, and that's what you want. You can do things for them. They can do things for you. But, I don't do that anymore because I don't like traveling so much. It's become a pain.
Yeah.
Airports are like bus stations were in the 1960s.
Oh yeah, I came back from the Dominican Republic when the day after Trump had made that announcement about the not allowing Syrians in, and I had to go through Chicago, believe it or not, and oh boy, that was a riot, just getting through all the protesters and all that, and I sympathize with them. I said, and I wasn't mad at them or anything like that, but it's a hassle, and my wife likes to travel, and I'm always complaining about traveling these days. I'm not certain where the American dollar is going. I'm not certain where the American economy is going. I just don't get any feedback from traditional sources other than from people like you as to prepare for the inevitable, which I'm a believer in. And have been for some time. And so far, I haven't been wrong. Now, there's been dips that I didn't expect, but, I survived the dips, and I wasn't hurt by it. But I see a lot of people getting hurt. A lot of people should be taking action, but they're not. They are absolutely frozen, and they actually believe that now with our new administration, things will be all right, and they're easing off. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. But if you say something about that, you're a naysayer, you're a negative thinking person, anti-American, you name it, you are. And
I know. Believe me, I know.
I'm not. I don't go to this meeting anymore, that a business meeting anymore, because every time I say something, people think that I've just totally lost my mind.
Well, listen, go to it and. Then next year they'll think you're a prophet.
Yeah, maybe so.
But then again, if they think you're a prophet, they'll think that your views might have had something to do with causing the storm that they're in. So maybe that's not such good advice after all.
Yeah. Well, Doug, I'd like to. What was your book, Speculator, which I really recommend everyone to read this book. I mean, you'll really get engrossed in it. It's so well written. What was the impetus behind this book? What was the motivation behind writing this book?
Well, that's the first book of a series of 6 or actually 7 books reforming the unjustly besmirched reputations of politically incorrect occupations. So Speculator is about a gold mining fraud and the mining industry and a revolution in Africa. So I think people could do themselves a favor by reading that book right now, because we might go into a bubble in gold and gold mining stocks. So people might be able to make 10 or 20 times on their money.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think so. And then in July, it was to reform, it was to counter political correctness, which I despise. So our hero, Charles Knight, in this book, after spending 7 years in the Orient, gets into the drug business, both legal and illegal. So Drug Lord is going to be out in July, and it talks about how and why and everything that you want to know about the legal and illegal drug businesses. And he becomes an assassin, which will come out next July, after this July of 18. And we talk about the trade of the assassin, how you can do it and the morality of it and who needs killing, so forth. So they become more and more radical after Assassin. Read this book. It's the gateway drug to much heavier ones that are coming along.
Okay, that's great.
From John Hunt.
I look forward to them. All right, we only have a couple of minutes left. Let me leave the closing to you, and I guess soon, hopefully, I'll see you in Argentina. I will give you a call.
No, I'm quite sincere. Look, if you don't do it, Joe, I'll quote something from Casablanca, one of my favorite movies, where Rick Blaine says this to somebody. He says, you may, and this I'm talking about, you're not coming down and taking a look. You may not regret it now, but you'll regret it soon and for the rest of your life.
Okay. Well, there's my motivation. Okay. All right. All right. I'll give you the last minute.
Well, nothing much I can add in the last minute, Joe. I mean, I've long been not just an anarchist and an atheist and a libertarian, which is, of course, makes for interesting duty when you live 3 months of the year in the People's Republic of Aspen. But I'm a solipsist as well, or have tendencies, which makes me believe that this is all just a figment of our imaginations anyway. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Life goes on. That's why I study ancient history. This is so amazing.
I feel better already. Doug, thank you so much for being our guest today. I do hope you will accept our invitation to return at a later date.
Good. I'll look forward to it, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure liberty.
Thanks a lot, Doug. Appreciate it.
Hey, yep.
Hold on just a sec.
Is this thing
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.